Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Ball Oasis Show. Man, a lot has happened since we last talked to y'all. Been away a little hiatus once again. I feel like we say that every episode now, which is on us. Life happens. But we're here now. We've got a lot to discuss as just over the last couple of days and weeks. Some crazy things have happened in the NBA, and I think that we would be remiss if we didn't start with the happenings of the Eastern Conference Finals that just ended, the 7-game series between the Boston Celtics and the Miami Heat, where we saw the Miami Heat take a 3-0 series lead, a commanding 3-0 series lead, and almost blow it by letting the Celtics force the series to go to 7 games, winning 3 of their own in a row, before ultimately running the Celtics out of their own gym in Game 7. Very, very weird series as we saw the momentum shift heavily in the Heat's favor and then heavily in the Celtics' favor and then right back in the Heat's favor for Game 7. Jacob, why do you think ultimately the Heat won the series?
It's hard to say because Game 7, I think almost everyone was confident Boston would win. They had the momentum, great. Jason Tatum had a great Game 7, the series before. But I think the reason they won is Boston just kind of missed their shots, especially Game 7. They started, I believe, 0 for 12 from 3. Boston did, and Miami was actually hitting their threes. Guys like Caleb Martin, who really has stepped up in playoffs. He was hitting big shots. Duncan Robinson has earned his money again this year. I think it just came down to 3-point shooting. Boston living and dying by the 3, and that kind of came back to bite them in the end, but I think that's the biggest thing is like their shot making.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that was by design. Of course, we saw the Miami Heat roll out that zone defense, especially in the last 2 games of the series, where they basically said, "Hey, Boston, we're going to let you shoot threes. We're going to contest those threes, but you're going to have the ability to shoot those threes." And Boston missed a lot of threes, albeit they were contested. In the last 2 games, they shot 16 for 77 from 3. And their star players, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, were culprit number 1 and 2 of that, as they both shot really terribly.
Yeah, I saw a stat today. Caleb Martin and Tyler Hero combined for more threes than Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown.
Caleb Martin and who?
Tyler Hero.
Is it? Oh, that's funny. That's really funny. Yeah, but I mean, we saw throughout the series, like, I saw the graph tracking like Caleb Martin scoring and Jaylen Brown scoring. And of course, Jaylen Brown.
Yeah.
I would say, of course, Jaylen Brown is this guy who's up for this supermax deal, 5 years, $300 million. And here comes Caleb Martin, who got cut by the Hornets like a year and a half ago. And he very, very easily could have won Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Yeah. The way that he played, he was unbelievable. Shot the ball unbelievably efficient. And the way he got on the glass, like I know in Game 6 he had 15 rebounds, and early in Game 7 he was really, really on the glass too. Hustle plays. He's the definition of a Miami Heat role player, and he played past that extent in the series, as we saw, as he knocked down almost every shot that he took.
Yeah.
Even with Jimmy Butler, not really having a game. We didn't see a 40, 45-point Jimmy Butler game in this series, and of course Bam wasn't just incredible offensively.
Yeah.
Especially in the later games of the series, he wasn't great.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Heat really did miss Gabe Vincent in Game 5. I think Gabe Vincent definitely stepped up and gave them some really, really great minutes. I think that he knocked down a lot of big timely shots, as we saw early in the series. Whenever they won their first 3 games, he hit that one step back jump shot over Jason Tatum to kind of seal Game 2. I think it was in Boston.
I think so.
And that was a really big win for the Heat. Those first 2 games in Boston, in particular, are ones that I think it almost made it impossible for Boston to come back from those, because Boston had the lead in both of those games.
Yeah.
Those were close games. Those weren't games that Miami just dominated. But Miami closed both of those games out on the road in a way that kind of just took all the life out of Boston. And it would have been very easy for Boston to lay down and get swept in this series. But we saw that they came back and they fought, and their role players played well. Shout out to Derek White. Shout out to Robert Williams, who was fighting through an illness late in the series. Shout out to
Malcolm Brogdon.
Malcolm Brogdon fighting
He
through an
injured,
injury.
yeah.
He only played 7 minutes in Game 7, which is something that I don't think has been talked about enough. Although Boston got ran out of the gym, I think they would have anyway. Malcolm Brogdon could have been a guy who gave them some stability because the way Boston was shooting very poorly and turning the ball over in Game 7, specifically Jaylen Brown, who had 8 turnovers. Malcolm Brogdon could have been plugged in and really combated some of those things as he's really, really sure-handed with the ball and a good shooter. So I think that they missed him in Game 7 and Rob Williams being at not full strength. And, of course, we saw 26 seconds into Game 7, Jason Tatum roll his ankle and was not 100% throughout the rest of the night. Even with all that being said, though, the Heat dominated. The Heat just dominated that game.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think JJ Redick said it. They have a way of making the best teams play the worst, and it's crazy to say, but they really have probably was not supposed to win any series so far, and
Right.
if they not easily, but could have easily won every
Every
series.
they've played so far has been more talented than them.
Yeah,
That's just what it is. They've been the less talented team in all 3 series.
yeah. I think it was the thing today. They said that every team has been better on paper, but Miami don't play on paper, don't play the game on paper. So
Yep. Shout out to Spo. Shout out to Spo for that.
I think he's probably the best coach in the NBA right now. And I don't think I'll put him up there. I think he is. I think he deserves it.
I'll say with the cards that he's dealt with the guys, the undrafted guys that they have, and I don't think that's just directly Coach Spo. I think that's just the Miami Heat culture, of course, and system like we talk about. But I think that derives down from Coach Spoelstra. I'll agree with you. I think Eric Spoelstra is probably the best coach in the NBA right now, just based off the talent that he's given and what he's done over the last couple of years, bringing that group of guys to the finals this year and then Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals last year. This year, though, I mean, just a couple months ago, we were talking about the Miami Heat potentially falling out of the play-in. They lost the first game of the play-in to Atlanta. And they were losing in the fourth quarter to Chicago with 3 minutes left. So they were 3 minutes away from missing the playoffs altogether. And now we see them here in the NBA Finals. Before we get to finals talk, though, because I do want to get into some pretty heavy finals talk as the series starts tomorrow. This episode will come out Thursday morning. So today, when this episode comes out, let's talk about Boston, though. Let's talk about the future of Boston. Let's just go ahead and dive into that. As we know, Jaylen Brown is up for his potential Supermax deal. And if he were to sign with Boston, which I've seen so far, I've seen a Brian Windhorst report that all signs kind of point to that right now.
Yeah.
Him and Jason Tatum will be signed for a combined $600 million, approximately $600 million, which is a lot of money to tie up into 2 guys. And here's my thing. I'll tell you my thing before I let you get into your spiel. Those guys are great players. And they're winning players, as we see time after time. Jason Tatum has been to the conference finals 4 times already, and Jaylen Brown, I think, has been 5 times. These guys are winning players, but the thing is, neither of them are the leader of that team. Neither of those guys are the leader of that team. Marcus Smart is the vocal leader of that team. So until one of those guys steps up, and you would have to think that it would be Jason Tatum.
Yeah.
To kind of step into that role, I don't know if the Celtics can really move forward from where they are right now. Because, I mean, obviously Jaylen Brown has some things to improve on, talking about his handle and maybe shot selection. And, of course, Jason Tatum, I mean, as great of a player as he is, maybe his shot selection is a little forced sometimes. Their system is random. Marcus Smart said, they play a lot of ISO ball, and that's just it's as much as I don't like to listen to the TNT analysts talk about their breakdowns of the series. It is hero ball. They're right. The Celtics do play hero ball a lot of times, and with the leader of that team being Marcus Smart, a lot of times it's Marcus Smart who's taking some really tough shots down the stretch.
Yeah.
And if I'm a championship contending team, I don't really want that. I don't. Marcus Smart is the vocal leader of that team, and I think if the Celtics want to really reach the highest potential of themselves, I think either one of two things has to happen. I think Jason Tatum has to emerge as a vocal leader of that team, demanding the ball in late game situations, and just really being the voice of the Boston Celtics. Because outside of Marcus Smart, they don't really have a voice. It's like Marcus Smart and like Al Horford are like the team leaders. Or don't re-sign Jaylen Brown. Trade him and go get a vocal leader. And here, let me tell you the direction that I'm headed with this. There's a player in Portland, Oregon, and me being a fan of the team has always been anti Damian Lillard trade. Rightfully so. He's an amazing player. He's a transcendent player. But him alongside Jason Tatum with the leadership that Damian Lillard inhibits, I think that's a match made in heaven. If the Boston Celtics could somehow pull off that trade and do that, I think that might be the one that puts them over the top. And as a fan of Damian Lillard and not just the team too, I wouldn't mind seeing that. I actually wouldn't mind seeing that because I want him to win. Yeah. And I don't know if he'll be able to win on my team or not at this point, at any point in his career. So, I mean, I think it's seriously worth considering if you're the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, you basically said everything that I was gonna say. You know, Tatum and Brown just take turns a lot of times, like you said, the random offense. But I do agree Tatum has to step up as the leader of that team, the vocal leader, because down the stretch he doesn't demand the ball. They run plays for him, but he does not demand the ball. And sometimes Jaylen Brown does, and you know it works every now and then. But you know, I think everyone on that team would rather it be Tatum. But and I do agree the Marcus Smart thing. I've seen him attempt more game-winning shots probably than I have Tatum or Brown this year. And it's really hard to think about when you had those two guys and you have Marcus Smart, who's not the best shooter or, you know, scorer or whatever, taking those shots. Because he's took multiple shots these playoffs and he's missed them. But like you said, I agree with you. Tatum either has to step up as the leader or you do trade Jaylen Brown.
Yeah. Let me ask you, before we move on from Boston, did you have anything else to say?
I'll say I have a third thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Would you think they would even talk about a trade involving Marcus Smart? Like, would they? He's a playmaker. I would say he's a playmaker. But if they get that actual playmaker, because I love watching. I hate, you know, it's a lot of stuff, but I loved watching when Robert Williams would set the screen and Marcus Smart would just lob it to him in the paint because it worked almost every time. He, I think, missed one shot, two shots the whole series, you know, doing that. If they get that actual playmaker, I understand you lose the defense, but if you get that actual playmaker, I think it really could help the way that we're saying that Tatum could.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't know if I have an answer for that right now because for the longest time, Marcus Smart has been that. He's been the defensive anchor of the team as a guard, and he's been the heart and soul of the Boston Celtics. He's been on the team for longer than anybody at this point has.
Yeah,
and I think that he has probably been one of the most untouchable role players of all time in NBA history.
Yeah,
I think Marcus Smart is criminally underrated as a player. I think that he's one of the most underrated players in NBA history. I think he's very underrated. But like you said, if you have the potential to go get a guy who can be a leader and can potentially push, I don't even know if push the timeline is the right way to put it, but to bring about change that Marcus Smart may not be the first person you look to, like you said, from a leadership perspective anymore. I think you have to consider it. And if you're talking about a guy like Damian Lillard, I think we talked about this. I don't think the Blazers would want Marcus Smart. I don't think that they would just because he wouldn't fit the timeline of that trade. So, yeah, I don't think that he would be wanted by them. But Marcus Smart is a very, very vital piece to the Boston
Yeah.
Celtics.
And the reason I'm thinking that is because I know you lose the defense, but they have another guard that could be just as good on defense in Derek White.
Right. They have two of them. They have Malcolm Brogdon and Derek White.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you could afford to trade. I would keep Derek White if I'm Boston. I think you could afford to shop Malcolm Brogdon or Marcus Smart. But yeah, it's just like you said, the Dame trade would be interesting. My thing is, how much depth would it take away from Boston? Because you would think, a Robert Williams or a Derek
I
White
would
would
say
be.
I would want Robert Williams. I would want Robert
Yeah,
Williams along with like Jaylen
and
Brown.
and we've seen with Phoenix that the lack of depth can hurt in the playoffs. So that's the only thing with that trade. But the two with Tatum and Lillard, they could each carry that team on a night. So it's very interesting to think about. It's just like you said that we've seen lately in the recent years that the lack of depth, but it's actually an interesting trade that they could happen.
Yeah. One more question about Boston before we move forward to this finals talk. If you were the Boston Celtics, if you were Brad Stevens, would you give Jaylen Brown that supermax deal at this current state?
No, no, not the supermax. If I was another team, I'd give them the max, which I know is a lot less money. But as if I was Brad Stevens, I wouldn't because $600 million is a lot of money. That's
Yep.
going to tie up those two. But then, how much money can you spend on the Marcus Smart, the Derek Whites, the role players that have been key to their runs the last few years? That's the only thing with that because that takes up a lot of cap space. And I know the CBA is increasing and everything, but if they could work out a deal that's lower than the max, that still agreeable on both sides, which it'd be kind of hard, but
Jaylen Brown wouldn't agree to that. I'll just tell you right now, Jaylen Brown would not agree to that.
timeline.
I think it's inevitable. I think he's on his way out.
Yeah, timeline wise, it wouldn't hurt because, like you said, they're both young and they've won so much, but it's just how much more, how much longer will you kind of wait and see, like, and test how long it'll work. But if I'm Brad Stevens, I wouldn't, like you said, I would shop him because he's on the last year of his contract. So it might be a rental for a team, but I think some teams would take that chance.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's inevitable that Jaylen Brown is on his way out at this point. Just what we've seen from him this season, too, some of the cryptic comments that he's made in like post games. I think he's on his way out. I just do.
Yeah, it's a few teams. We'll do that.
Yeah. That's enough of Boston Celtics for now, though. I'm sure that we'll hear a lot more from them over the next couple of days and weeks as, free agency comes about and trades, start to happen around draft time, most likely.
Yeah.
Let's talk finals, though. The Miami Heat are going up against the Denver Nuggets, who haven't played basketball in about a week and a half. And I think that it's kind of similar to last year where, of course, Golden State beat Dallas pretty handily in the Western Conference Finals. And, of course, we saw last year's Miami-Boston series go the distance. So I think it could be a thing, especially here in Game 1, where the Nuggets kind of come out a little sluggish. They come out a little slow just because they had that break. We saw that last year with Boston going into Golden State and taking Game 1. I think that that's a very strong possibility. I think that the Heat team is very capable of doing that, especially riding this high after winning a very big Game 7 in Boston. So I would not be surprised one bit if the Heat came in and took Game 1 in Denver. Let's just talk overall series, though, Jacob. What is one of the most intriguing things about this series to you going into it?
I think for me, it's who's going to be guarding Jamal Murray, which more than likely would be Jimmy Butler or maybe Caleb Martin. But I think in my opinion, if they can hold Jamal Murray under 25 points per game, close, they have a good chance to win the series. Because Jokic is going to get his points. He's going to get, his assists, rebounds, everything. But Jamal Murray is a big part of them sweeping the Lakers.
Yeah.
So if Jimmy or whoever's on Jamal Murray can hold him, not let him get hot, especially down the stretch and end the games, where Denver has went on a lot of runs in the playoffs at the end of games. That's my biggest thing is how can they slow down Jamal Murray and keep him in check?
Yeah. Going into this series, I have two big things that stand out to me the most. I think that this series will be ultimately won by which team's role players play better. I think you could say that about a lot of series, but of course we've seen Miami's role players won them the series against Boston. They did. Caleb Martin won them the series. The way Gabe Vincent played some games won them the series. The way Duncan Robinson shot the ball, Max Strus stepped up in some big moments, won them the series. And we've seen Denver's role players throughout the playoffs just be super, super solid. Guys like Aaron Gordon and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Bruce Brown been really, really good. So I think that role players, whichever team's role players play the best, will win the series ultimately. Another point I'll make is I brought up that zone that Miami ran against Boston. You can't run that against Nikola Jokic.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You cannot run that zone against Nikola Jokic and expect it to work because he will pick it apart. And going back and kind of watching some of their games this year, they tried to employ that zone, and Jokic just tore them up. So I think Miami knows that going in. So I don't think that will be something that they try to do. Maybe not even at all, but definitely not often, especially when Jokic is on the floor. Because he'll operate from that high post, and we know the playmaker is. He'll pick it apart. I think we should each give an X factor of this series going into it. I think that that's something we should do. Jacob, if Miami were to win this series, who do you think would be the X factor?
I think it's. I want to say Caleb. I think it's Bam.
Bam.
I think it's how because Jokic is going to get his stats, get his points, but if Bam is one of the better defending centers, versatile defenders in the league. If he can try to slow down Jokic, I know it's hard, but if he can try to slow him down, not get in foul trouble, and kind of compete on the boards with him, especially not letting Denver get offensive rebounds, I think he's going to be a big part. He has to step up. He has been struggling. He has to step up to if they want to beat Denver. That he has to step up in this series, especially guarding Jokic.
Yeah, he's got probably the toughest job of anybody, and I'm sure it won't be just him guarding Jokic. Yeah. But yeah, that's an impossible task to ask somebody.
Yeah,
because Jokic is going to you can't stop him because if you stop him one way, he will pick you apart another way. So you kind of got to pick your poison. Is what it is. And I don't know if the Heat want to make Jokic the scorer or the passer or just try to limit him in general the best they can.
I think they should make him the scorer.
Think so?
Yeah, because I've been saying it like since it was Denver or since it was, we knew it was going to be Miami. I think I would live with Jokic getting 40 points tonight if you can keep Denver's role players and starters not hitting threes, not making a lot of threes.
That's a tall task because they knock them down.
Yeah, so I think if they can slow them down, which I know Boston just kind of struggled. Miami played good defense on them, but like you said, that zone you can't run against Denver. And I believe Eric Spoelstra will have a game plan to try to slow Jokic down. But if they can stop the threes, or at least contest them really good and make them miss, then I would live with Jokic scoring the most points every night.
Yeah, and it sucks that all that falls on Bam's shoulders, but you're going up against the best center in the NBA, most likely. Yeah. So I hope that he's ready for it. My X factor for the Miami Heat is going to be Kyle Lowry. And I don't know how many minutes Kyle Lowry will play in this series, but I think Kyle Lowry will have a very, very important part to play. I think that his veteran presence on the floor will be big for the Heat in this series. He's been to the finals before with the Toronto Raptors.
He shot the ball really well against Boston.
I think if he allows himself to create shots, because we saw in some games against Boston, he created his shots pretty well. And I don't think that he'll be a emphasis necessarily on the defensive scouting report So I think that he'll have the ability to go out there and do his thing. Defensively, though, I think Kyle Lowry has a really good chance to be that guy, like you said, to potentially come in and take a lot of the Jamal Murray assignment.
Yeah.
And that, like I said, that might be in limited minutes, but I think that could be a very big thing. As of course we know, Kyle Lowry is a very savvy defender. He's not the most physically gifted defender, and he doesn't. At this point, he's old. He isn't quick or anything, but he's savvy and he draws charges and he moves his feet well. And so I think that he'll have a very important part to play. And if he shoots the ball well too, I think that will look really, really good for the Miami Heat.
Yeah, I agree. He's going to be a big part, but I think Jimmy on Jamal, like I kind of mentioned earlier, if they do that, we know Jokic and Jamal runs a lot of pick and rolls. Bam can switch on Murray. It's going to be tough, but he can.
Yeah, he can.
And I'd rather have Jimmy on Jokic than Kyle Lowry. But if that happened, it'd more likely be a double team coming from somewhere. But we've seen, Jimmy, he can guard the paint. He's not gonna back down. So I think just the pick and roll, that's like another thing for Miami, the pick and roll, how they kind of guard that. But you're right. I think Kyle Lowry, if he makes his shots, it'd be really good for them.
Yeah. We saw the Heat roll at their highest when Kyle Lowry was playing his best in the Boston series. That's what it was. What about Denver? Who's your X factor for Denver?
I was thinking about it when we were talking. I think I'm gonna have to go with. I think I'm gonna lean Aaron Gordon.
Aaron Gordon.
Yeah, because I think he's gonna draw the Jimmy Butler assignment.
I think so too.
So I think if he can slow Jimmy down and not let it be like a Milwaukee series where he averages over 33 or 30 points, that'll really help them. And Jimmy can get to the basket, draw fouls. If he can stay out of foul trouble, guarding Jimmy, it'll come down to that, I think, in the series.
Yeah.
Or if guys, I guess I would say Michael Porter Jr. hit the shots, but I think I'd lean Aaron Gordon over probably anyone.
Yeah, I agree. I think Aaron Gordon is going to have the Jimmy Butler assignment. I think that he's going to play probably the most minutes out of anybody on Denver in this series, actually. I think that he'll be on the floor the most because of that assignment. And Aaron Gordon's a guy that you don't have to get consistent offensive production from to win. And we've seen that throughout the playoffs. He was solid in the Minnesota series. He wasn't so good in the Phoenix series, but he stepped up in the Lakers series and was really big down the stretch of some of those games. So Aaron Gordon, as off and on as an offensive player as he may be, his size and his versatility is going to make him the guy who guards Jimmy Butler. And I expect KCP to probably guard him a bit too. I expect Bruce Brown to maybe step on him for a minute. But Aaron Gordon will be the main guy who gets the Jimmy Butler assignment. He will. My guy, though.
Okay, good.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'll talk when you know.
Okay. I am. You mentioned Michael Porter. I think that Michael Porter's shot making is going to be very important in this series, and I don't think that Michael Porter is necessarily a guy who can shoot Denver out of games, just because of how great everyone else is. But I think Michael Porter making his shots makes it almost impossible for them to be beat. If Michael Porter is shooting up around 50% from the field and like 40 from three, you're done. You're cooked. It's just what it is. And we know like the difficulty of the shots that he takes. Like even if you have two hands in his face covering his eyes, he's gonna shoot the ball. He's gonna shoot the ball anyway. And we know the whole stigma. Michael Porter doesn't pass. Yeah, that's true. But I mean, he's never seen a shot that he doesn't like. But he knocks him down. Is the point I was trying to make. He knocks down those contested shots a lot of the time. So he's a guy that I think Miami will have to be very careful of because he is a microwave and he can get hot and he can create his own shot. Who do you think would be the defender on Michael Porter?
Yeah, I was going to ask you who would draw that assignment.
You said Jimmy would be on
Jamal. Do you? I don't like that.
We might see some Haywood Highsmith minutes in the final.
Yeah, say, would you start Highsmith and let Caleb Martin come off the bench, or Max
I
Strus?
would let Caleb Martin guard Michael Porter Jr. to start the series and just see how it goes. I would let that because Caleb Martin is a gritty. He's a savvy defender.
Yeah.
I would say do that and just see how it goes.
Because I was gonna say I don't think we'll see Kevin Love a lot this series.
Yeah.
Unless rebound is a problem. I don't think Cody Zeller will play a lot. I think it's Haywood Highsmith because he really stepped up against Boston defensively. So
Yeah.
I think he'll, if he starts, I think he'll draw that assignment.
Yeah. Another thing that interests me so much about this series is the contrasting styles of play. Like Denver is a team who scores 120 points a game and runs really fluid offense, and of course we see Miami as the team that slows the game down and is super gritty. And I think Denver has some grit too. I think Denver has some very gritty players, but we know that they are willing to get into a track meet. And so it will be interesting to see who kind of dictates play. I think that whoever can ultimately dictate that the most will probably win the series. I think that kind of favors the Heat a little bit just because it's playoffs and finals and the game will be in the half court. Not saying that Nikola Jokic isn't a great half court offensive initiator, but I think that the Heat have to do that to have a chance in the series.
Do you think the playoff experience will kind of be a factor with Miami being to the finals and multiple conference finals? But you think that'll play a factor in this series?
I think it could, but there are some guys on Denver who have been in the finals too.
Yeah.
Like they have KCP and they have Jeff Green, and they've got some veteran leadership in Denver. So the Heat probably have the edge on that, I guess, a little bit. But Denver's a veteran team.
Yeah.
I don't think that's just. I don't think that's a huge storyline in this series.
Yeah. We could probably sit here all night and just bring up stuff between the two teams.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing for Miami is they run a lot of Bam bringing the ball up and doing a handoff to Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
So will Jokic be guarding Jimmy on the perimeter? Doing that.
I think that's definitely. I think that's something that the Heat try to accomplish. I think that's what every team tries to accomplish whenever you play the Nuggets. Try to get Jokic involved in the pick and roll, get him switched onto a guard. That's the best thing you can hope for. And it's not like, of course, we know that Denver's defense isn't incredible. We know that they don't have a great defense or anything, but they've done a good job of masking that flaw so far in the playoffs. They haven't allowed that to happen very much.
Yeah, so that's one thing that, but you could pick things apart either way, and like how are they gonna stop this, playing to that. And one interesting thing, last thing I'm gonna say is neither run the backup big almost half the time.
Right, they don't.
So Jeff Green's like the backup big, I think for Denver, and then I think Miami it's Haywood Highsmith every now and then.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting to see that both teams could play fast if they really wanted to be in that way.
Yeah, I think you're right. Coaching, I would probably lean towards the Heat. I would lean towards Coach Spo, but I think that Coach Mike Malone is a very good coach in his own right. I think when you talk about experience, I think that might be a thing because Coach Spo has been to the finals so many times at this point, and Coach Michael Malone has never been there before. I think that could be a thing, but I don't think that Coach Michael Malone will get outcoached very much in this series. I think that he'll be able to hold his own on that front.
I think he'll get outcoached, but it's not going to be a wide margin like we've seen with Eric Spoelstra some of this playoffs. It won't be that wide of a margin.
Yeah. All right. Predictions. Nuggets Heat. 7-game series is what we're hoping for. Jacob, night before game 1, who you got in the series? How many games is it going? And tell us why. Tell us why you think that.
I'm gonna go with Miami in 7.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Before you start, I asked you a week ago. Hey, you said Denver in 6. You said I think Denver in 6, Denver in 5. You said Denver is the point. You said Denver. Now you're saying Miami. What's up with that?
They're hot. The role players are making shots. Your Gabe Vincent, your Caleb Martins, which Denver is too. But like you said, how sluggish will Denver be at least the first game? I think Miami can get game one, can steal game one. And like we said against Boston, Jimmy didn't have a Jimmy game, and he could very well have it in the finals. We saw what he did in the finals before, but it was a bubble. But and I'm pretty sure you saw the video, but Jimmy didn't even want to touch the Eastern Conference trophy, and people's like he's locked in. I think he really wants his championship, which Denver does too. But I'm gonna lean Miami because they have been hot, and we've seen what they've done the last few days. They've not had a almost 2 week rest, but I'm gonna lean Miami. And I'm just wearing this because Jimmy.
You are repping.
Jimmy,
So you were kind of pressured to say Miami.
Yeah, I'm repping Jimmy, so I think Miami has it in 6. And there's an interesting thing. Denver hasn't lost at home yet. But Miami has I think they haven't lost at home. Miami has won every like away game, first away game. So every series they've won game 1. So
something's got to give.
Yeah, so I'm gonna lean Miami.
Interesting.
If Denver kills them, I'm not surprised, but I'm gonna lean Miami.
I've done some thinking, and it is hard to deny the momentum shift that the Heat are on after that deflating Game 6. I think that the mentality that Eric Spoelstra and the Heat players came into the press conference with, I think that was perfect going into Game 7. Yeah. Talking about we're ready to play tonight, like we could go out there, we're ready to go right now. Not really dwelling on Game 6 and being ready to move past that, and they sure did in Game 7 where they blow the Celtics out of the water. The Heat are riding a wave. And Denver has kind of just coasted through everybody, and it hasn't been much of a challenge for them outside of some crazy performances from Devin Booker and Kevin Durant in the second round. And Jimmy Butler is capable of performances like that. I've been doing thinking, and like I said, I think it will come down to role players. And as great as Caleb Martin and Gabe Vincent and Max Strus and Duncan Robinson and Kyle Lowry have been at points, I think Denver's the better team. I just think Denver's the better team.
Yeah.
And so I think the Denver Nuggets win this series in 6 games, which would put them winning Game 6 in Miami. And I realize that. I just think Denver's the better team. I think Jokic will have his way.
Yeah.
I don't think that the Heat will be able to stop Jokic. I think that he'll be able to pick apart their defense. And if the Nuggets role players are knocking down their shots like they have, I know the Heat have shot very well from 3 in the playoffs too. I believe in the Nuggets 3-point shooting more than I do in the Heat. I do.
Yeah, that's understandable.
And ultimately, I believe in the Nuggets role players more than I do the Heat, which is crazy to say because guys like Caleb Martin and Gabe Vincent have stepped up in major ways. But you look at a guy like Aaron Gordon, like Michael Porter Jr., like KCP, Bruce Brown, Jeff Green. They're loaded. They're just loaded, and they play so consistently well. I'm gonna go with Denver in 6.
Yeah, I think Miami's role players, since they are so hot, I'm giving them the edge. But like you said, I think if they can keep Denver from making those runs in the fourth quarter, those which we saw against the Lakers when the Lakers were up, if they can keep them from going on those 13-0 runs, the 14-2 runs, Miami has a good chance because that's how Denver got a lot of those games. They went on late runs. The Lakers would come back, make it close, and then it'd be another run. So, but it's going to be a good series. I really hope it goes 7, but it'll be a good series regardless.
I'm excited. And I know the discourse around the series has been like, oh, 2 boring teams, the Heat and the Nuggets, like, who cares? This is going to be a great series as a fan of basketball. I think a lot of people are just fans of basketball narratives and drama, especially on Twitter and Instagram. But for basketball fans who really enjoy the product, this is going to be an amazing series.
Yeah. Well, like I mean, it's one versus 8 seed, so it's not gonna be good. But
Crazy,
they're not an eight.
crazy.
They're not playing like an 8 seed, so. But
Yeah. Let's talk about. Let's segue into some head coaching changes that have happened over the past couple of days and weeks. I know I just saw the alert a second ago that said Monty Williams just took the job with the Detroit Pistons.
okay, my phone's been going off, and I've been trying not to look at it.
Yeah, which is a crazy turn of events. You're like the coach of
Did you
the year,
see?
go from Phoenix to Detroit.
Did you see the contract?
Uh,
6 years, 72 million.
they're trying to build. They're trying to build over there in Detroit.
They said they wanted them long term, but yeah,
Man, that's crazy.
That's over.
Dang, if they would have gotten like a top 3 pick, they would be like living right now. But unfortunately, they fell to number 5 in the lottery, which really sucks. But
yeah,
I think that's great for Detroit. I think that's a great thing to get Monty Williams to build your team back up from ground zero, basically.
yeah, we'll get to the like lottery, but I think I like that. We'll start off with that. We'll start off. I like the move for Detroit. I think it's a new voice, a new culture. Monty is a great coach, and they were bad last year, but you can attribute that to Cade missing basically the whole year. Then you got guys, young guys, whoever the 5th pick is, if they don't trade it.
They've got a lot of rebuild. They've still got a lot of rebuilding to do.
They got a lot of rebuilding, but I think bringing in Monty, a very good coach, coach of the year last year, he can set them up. He can go ahead and start getting them ready, developing for whenever they are ready to compete, or not even compete, just make that playoff push. That they will be ready.
Yep.
So I really like that for Detroit. It was kind of weird. Everybody was like, "Where's Monty going to go?" Once all the other coaches got hired, but I really like that for Detroit. It's a good first step for whatever.
The one thing that Monty brings with him anywhere is culture. Monty brings culture with him, and the Pistons are probably a team that lacked a little bit of culture. So I think that they're set up for a solid rebuild. They just got to continue to just lose for a little while longer, and you'll be set. You'll be set up. But we got Monty going to Detroit. Of course, we saw Ime going to the Rockets. That may have even happened before the last episode we recorded. But now we're seeing that like his whole Boston assistant coaching staff is going to follow him to the Rockets.
3 to 4, I think.
Yeah. So they're trying to develop a culture down there in Houston too, and of course we have no idea what to expect. Who's going to play for Houston? Who's going to be on Houston in 2 to 3 months?
Yeah.
We've seen all the James Harden stuff, and we've seen Jalen Green and Jabari Smith's names be thrown in trade rumors already.
Jalen Brown could end up in Houston.
Right. Houston's trying to win. Houston's trying to win games right now, and I don't fully understand it because I don't think that their ceiling would be very high. I think that they would be like a 5 to 8 seed at best. But I don't know. They're tired of losing, I guess.
Yeah, like I said, they've been bottom of the league last 3 years, and I really like the Ime hire for them too. With everything that happened in Boston, which that was nothing bad, or it was organizational situation, but that's a culture right there. That's a great culture that coming to Boston. We saw what it did last year, got into the finals. So there's a lot of teams, I think, just trying to get a culture set for they're ready to compete. Like, I don't know much about Adrian Griffin. They hired him. The Bucks hired him as a head coach.
Griffin, I was going to segue into that too.
Yeah, he was the assistant head coach for Nick Nurse in Toronto. I don't know much about that, but Giannis endorsed him. They met. He endorsed. So obviously, there's some type of culture or vision they have. So I don't even know. I really don't know what to think about that one because I haven't. I just don't know. But yeah, I trust Giannis. If Giannis really likes him, I think it'll be great.
Yeah, I don't know much about Adrian Griffin either. Just that he's AJ Griffin, who plays for the Hawks, is his dad, and that he's been a member of those Toronto coaching staffs that have been revered as some of the best in the league over the past 5 years or so.
Yeah.
So I think that it's a solid. I think it's a solid pickup, and I just don't know what to expect from it. Is all. Just because we don't know much about him. But
Yeah.
I mean, if like you said, if Giannis endorsed him and the guys want him there in Milwaukee, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Speaking of Toronto coaching staff members, let's segue into the head coach of Toronto being moved to your team. Talk about Nick Nurse.
That's that what we've been saying about all of them. That's another culture thing because I don't think Philly really didn't have a culture with Doc Rivers. He's a great. He will call you out. He will hold you accountable. You know, it was lazy moments in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Nick Nurse will call you out and get on you about it. But
yeah,
I
keep
think,
going. I'm plugging my phone in, by the way.
Okay, I think Nick Nurse, which he's been revered as one of the better coaches in the league, and especially one of the best defensive minds in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that really brings a new intensity and I guess defensive minded or defensive oriented scheme. Philly will have this upcoming year, and I think he's on a long term too. I don't think it's was said what it was, but I believe it is a long term.
Yeah, I thought that was a really good hire for the Philadelphia 76ers. I think that, like you said, I think that it will bring a culture about them that Doc Rivers maybe didn't employ.
Yeah,
I don't think Rivers is a bad coach or anything, and I think that he. What do you have to say about that?
I'm not saying he's the worst coach, but he has his moments.
Yeah, he just lacks in some areas. He lacks in some areas of the coach. He lacks some
Yeah,
discretion. Then I think Nick Nurse isn't the perfect coach. I think that potentially Joel Embiid will be gassed by December
yeah.
based off rotations.
I,
But
I
yeah,
think
it's just
I
it's
think
just a new to look forward to.
yeah, I think he's smart enough not to play Joel that much. I would hope, but
Yeah,
uh,
that may be a little extreme talking about he because he knows Joel
it,
Embiid. He scouted against him pretty good.
it is funny because they have went at each other in the media, especially last year in the playoffs about Joel called him out on the sideline, tell him quit complaining, and the same Nick Nurse did the same, and now coach and player. But that's the reason he came to Philly. He wanted to coach Joel and be with Daryl Morey again.
Yeah, and of course we don't know what to expect with Philadelphia with James Harden, of course, potentially being on his way out, and we see that
Yeah,
Fred VanVleet could potentially make his way there following his coach. So we talked about that earlier today, and you said that you would be all right with that.
yeah. I think offensively, I'd be all right with it. We do lose, one of the better playmakers in the NBA. But Fred VanVleet can get you seven, average 7 assists, with James average 10. But I guess scoring is about the same. Harden does have his moments where he can get 45, like we saw. But I wouldn't mind. But defense will be really bad. But if anybody could make art with Maxey and Fred VanVleet,
I think Fred VanVleet is a solid defender.
yeah, he is. And Maxey has shown flashes in the playoffs that he can jump in past the lanes and
There's
make.
undersized, I guess.
Yeah, they're undersized. But if there is a coach that can figure that out, it is Nick Nurse. So I wouldn't mind it. He'd be a lot cheaper, I will say. He will want a lot of money, and he will more than likely be the third option.
Yeah.
Especially considering, the Tobias Harris trade rumor that's been going on for 5 years now. But I wouldn't mind. I think he probably is the safest option out of him, James, and Kyrie, maybe. He probably is the safest option.
Yeah. Um, and he'll have that continuity already with his coach too. So I think that will definitely help in that scenario
Yeah.
for sure. Are there any other coaching changes that we've seen? I
I
know
haven't
the Phoenix job is still open and the Toronto job is still open.
I haven't heard anything about Toronto. I know for Phoenix, the finalists are Doc Rivers, Kevin Young, I think
And
an
Frank
assistant,
Vogel.
Frank Vogel, yeah. Which I'm telling Phoenix right now, if you get Doc Rivers, you can go ahead and you can try it, but it won't
Yeah.
work out.
I'm interested to see like who's like leading that leading that search for Phoenix, like player wise. Like, is it Chris Paul or is it Kevin Durant? Like, I'm sure they all have a hand in it, but I'm wondering like who's like the overarching voice.
I think it has been reported that Devin Booker and Kevin Durant is back. I think it's Kevin Young. I think that's his name. The assistant on Phoenix.
I kind of think he'll get the job.
Yeah, they've really backed him, and I think it's Matt, the new owner. He's not scared to get a big name or make a move. So
I just got a notification that said Monty's deal could be worth $100 million over 8 years.
Could read.
I guess that's incentive based, but holy!
Is this the biggest coaching contract? Like, I'm not gonna say
that I've heard of, yeah.
That I've seen, yeah. I really want to see what ours is with Nick Nurse because they said it's a long term, but I don't think it's a 8-year, $100 million.
That's insane.
Oh man.
Yeah, a lot of these teams too that are bringing in new coaches. I guess I tried to segue that into lottery talk, but I mean these are contending teams. These are good teams who are picking up new coaches. Yeah. Milwaukee and Philly and Phoenix. Of course, you have the lower tier teams like Detroit and Houston.
Yeah.
But let's segue into lottery before we end this episode today. So we saw the lottery, I guess, 2 weeks ago at this point. Of course, the San Antonio Spurs getting the number 1 overall pick and rights to Victor Wembanyama, basically. Brian Windhorst literally interviewed him afterwards and said, "So how does it feel to be going to San Antonio?" Which I thought was crazy, but I mean, it's true. It's gonna happen. And as a fan of the Portland Trailblazers, I thought the lottery went well, getting up to pick number 3, because I think if our pick had been even number 4 or lower, I think that would really limit our trade options, because of course we see the top 3 prospects with Victor, who will go number 1, and either Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller, who will fall at 2 or 3. That's a lot better of a trade trade asset than like an Amin or Osar Thompson. Yeah. So I'm excited. And I think that Portland will definitely make a move. Although I've seen, the Thompson twins worked out, I think today or yesterday for Portland, and Dame seemed to really like Amin Thompson in particular. But that happens. Those things happen. I know that he wants that pick to be moved to compete now. But yeah, lottery. What stood out to you about the lottery, Jacob, and going forward?
I would say Detroit falling to 5. Had a chance at 1 that really sucked. But I think this year, we saw it last year. I think this year there's going to be a lot of picks moved. Certainly, with Portland, you got Houston at 4, Detroit at 5. Those 3 could get moved. Then you got Indiana wanting to move up.
Yeah.
Orlando has, I believe, 6 and 11 or 8 and 11.
Orlando could trade down.
So they could trade down definitely, or package those together for a player that if they want to compete. I think it'll be like last year. It'll be a lot of draft night trades, which we kind of have mentioned, but I don't know what to think. After 3, I don't know what to expect. I'll say after 2, I don't know what to expect because Charlotte needs a guard and a wing. So
I think, and I've told you, I think that they'll take Brandon Miller at number 2.
Yeah.
I think they'll take Brandon Miller.
I think they will, but I wouldn't be surprised if they got Scoot. But for a Portland fan, I think it'd be better if they took Brandon Miller because Scoot probably has more value, trade wise, maybe.
So, and I think about like the teams like who would want him, who we've been rumored to be involved with, and the Raptors immediately come up. If they're going to lose Fred VanVleet, that opens it up perfectly for Scoot Henderson to slide right into there and open up for a OG Pascal trade, which we've talked about for a few weeks now. I think that would work perfectly.
And if Houston wants to compete, they could package Jason Tate, KPJ in that 4th pick for Jaylen Brown or whoever they want. So I think really going into draft night, there's going to be a lot of rumors, especially the night before it. You know how it normally is, but
Yeah.
I don't know what to expect this draft. You know, there could be teams that's out of the lottery that want to move up, or like you said, the Toronto. I think Toronto is probably the most intriguing team during the lottery, but
Yeah.
or the draft. But I don't
I
know
was
about.
I was reading an article. I'll say this. I was reading an article about Portland and what they could potentially do, and apparently they're gonna like hold out until like the last possible minute to see all offers, and it's probably a deal that if they make a deal that won't be done until draft night.
Yeah, it'll. I would the day of the draft probably, or I know it's like what 5 minutes in the first round or something, 5 to something like that.
Yeah.
Once Charlotte makes their pick, Portland's probably gonna get a bunch of calls. Teams are waiting to see who Charlotte's getting.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure they'll get some. I think those teams get intel on those type of things before the draft. Like, I think that they tell each other who they're going to pick.
Probably.
At least to an extent.
Yeah, probably. Because I know last year, Jabari was like the number one until the day of. Then it was Palos. Yeah,
Sure.
I'm really excited to see. Like you've been saying, I don't know if you said it on here yet, but you've been saying that one of Dame or Ant is more likely not going to be in Portland next year. So
I think it's inevitable at this point. Yeah.
So we expect some moves, especially in that top 5, top 10, some trades.
For sure. And this is about the time of year where I start to really do my draft scouting too. So I know a lot about the top guys, and I have a pretty good sense of what they're worth, what I believe that they could be worth for trades. And like I said, I think anybody outside those top 3, I think the value kind of drops significantly after that.
Yeah.
I think that in their own rightful years, I think that either one of Victor Wembanyama, Brandon Miller, or Scoot Henderson could go number 1.
Yeah, I agree.
In draft. I think they could. This is a loaded draft. This is a really good draft.
Yeah, it is. You could find somebody in the 20s that could be a really good player.
Yeah. I've got my draft sleepers coming here in like a few weeks. I've already been thinking about that.
Yeah, I didn't watch as much college basketball as I wanted, but I know there are some. I've done some scouting, but it's just really hard to tell with all the trades that could happen. And I think what draft is 3 weeks, close to 3.5.
Yeah, I think it's 3 weeks from tomorrow.
It's the 22nd. Yeah, well 4. Yeah, 3. Yeah.
Yeah. So, a lot coming up. A lot coming up in the NBA sphere, and we're super excited for the finals, of course, tomorrow that starts. It's going to be a great series, I can imagine. That's all I wanted to talk about today, Jacob. You got anything to add before we close and get out of here today?
You got it all.
Yeah, it was good to be back. Good to be talking about ball again.
Hopefully we can get back in the groove of being consistent.
Yeah. And I know that we've said that a couple times now, but I mean it this time, guys. I really mean it. And like I said, I don't even know if anybody like sits and like waits for these episodes. And I know that people don't watch the whole thing. There are probably like 4 people that watch to this point of the episode, but we really do appreciate y'all watching and tuning into us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, all right. We'll check back in hopefully here soon. And until then, peace out, everybody.